Hello everyone, welcome to my channel PhD Chats. I'm so glad to have you here. If this is your first time on this channel, we will be chatting and discussing everything relationships, teaching, education, family, marriage, and taking care of yourself, right? Self-care. So this series is about 10 tough questions about each of those topics. So I'm excited that you're here, and let's get ready to dive in. Welcome to my 10 question series. And today we are going to discuss 10 tough questions about education. I am a special education teacher in the New York City public school system, and I teach middle school students from grades 6 through 8. Now, I have, over the 7 years as a public school teacher and 7 years as a daycare provider, I have taught almost every single age of child. As an early childhood provider, I cared for children from 6 weeks old up to 5. In the public school system, I taught children as young as 7 years old in second grade. So I taught incoming first graders, second graders that would be up, being promoted to third grade. I taught fourth grade, fifth grade. I'm teaching 6th through 8th grade. And during the summer, I did summer school and I taught high school students, some as old as 21 years old. So I've taught children from 6 through 21 at this point. There is very few jobs that rise to the level of demand and complexity as teaching. Everybody has had a teacher. We are the nurturers and the inceptors. We are the seed planters. We are the dream catchers. We are the caretakers. We are the listeners. And so teaching really does go beyond curriculum. A teacher who really loves what they're doing and who sets high standards for themselves has a very good chance of being burnt out, but also is doing impactful work in the classroom. 10 tough questions about education, right? So from a teacher's perspective, question number 1, how do you teach children who come to school carrying emotional weight? That's every child. That's every child. I don't think that there is a child on the earth that has nothing that they're thinking about or worried about, whether that thing is insignificant or whether that is a significant trauma. Children have concerns. They have things that worry them. They're anxious sometimes. They're nervous. School in and of itself is a performance-based space, right? There's hierarchy. There's bright children. There's completion. There's deadlines. There's tasks. There's change. There's transition. So the way school is structured in and of itself can be anxiety provoking. So there's that low level concern, that typical expected emotional stress associated with the experience of school. And teachers do a really good job all over the world, making sure that children are excited to be in the classroom, that they appear excited, that they make learning this really enthusiastic, amazing thing that happens when there's new information that you get that you didn't know when you walk into the building, that morning. So I think teachers are doing a really good job with that. SEL, socio-emotional learning, is embedded into every single lesson, every single time. Just the act of tracking a teacher is self-regulation, right? Being respectful of what your peers share in the class. Being kind if you get an A and someone gets an F. Listening while someone is speaking, restraining the urge to interject. Being brave enough to share an answer that you're not certain of. Receiving a grade that you disagree with, but being resilient enough to try again the next time. School requires emotional resilience. and self-control and regulation. So even if every single child was perfectly behaved, the act of being a student in and of itself requires so many soft skills: being on time, taking instruction in a group, the list goes on. But every child isn't perfect, and every child isn't emotionally resilient, and every child isn't getting a fair amount of protection and love and care at home. So yeah, we do encounter children that are needier than others, who need more of our time and more of our effort in terms of instruction and curriculum, and in terms of our emotional availability. School systems have a huge support staff that really manage and handle, children that need extra support outside of the classroom. There's psychologists, there's school psychologists, there are therapists, there's social workers, there's guidance counselors. So there are spaces in the school where those things can be addressed outside of the classroom, but teachers are definitely embedding SEL in their learning every day. I can't separate the two. I don't think that they're two different things. I think attending to a child's emotional needs is part of what you're doing when you educate them, right? Because you are helping them to see their best selves. You're helping them to see their ability. You're helping them to see, that they can. It's, every time you stand in front of a class and you're disseminating information, what you're implying is that you can do this. You are constantly addressing a child's emotional well-being just from the act of teaching. Some children struggle. They struggle with succeeding in the classroom. They struggle with the expectations of the system. And they're struggling because some of the skills that they need to be successful in the classroom were never taught to them. They don't know. And teachers have a limited amount of time. I mean, our primary purpose is the dissemination of the curriculum, presenting the curriculum in a way that children can access it and learn and critique it and think critically and analyze it and leave and apply it to the world outside of school, and then come back the next day for more information. So that is our primary purpose, but embedded in all of that every day is addressing the emotional needs of children. It is difficult. Sometimes one cancels out the other, right? We may be so focused on learning that we may not be able to address an emotional need, or sometimes, learning is interrupted so that an emotional need can be addressed. And I think administrators support that if, something arises that requires a whole group socio-emotional learning moment for 5 minutes and the lesson is stopped, we address the behavior. And if the behavior warrants an individual, private conversation with the child, then, based on supervision, you can step outside of the classroom and have that conversation. So it's kind of separating, like you're mixing salt and sugar granules together, and you can't really separate the two. I think that they're happening simultaneously, that you're teaching and you're carrying or helping children to carry the weight that they bring into the classroom. So we're doing both every day. We are teaching, we are, attempting to heal and comfort and motivate and strengthen. We're doing all of that while we are instructing children, right? Question number 2, why do we confuse compliance with actual learning? So yes, again, the nature of learning and the structure of our school system, we are now, over the last few years, moving away from teacher-centered learning into a student-centered space where students have a voice in what they learn, how they learn, and that learning needs to be tangible, it needs to be evident, right? So the expectation to produce evidence of learning is where the the compliance comes in, and sometimes the need to show that learning takes place, the effort put to doing that can override the effort that you put toward making sure that actual learning and actual brain effort and brain work took place. Because it's very easy to play the role of a student. It's very easy to fill out a worksheet. It's very easy to give students busy work. It's very easy to present the appearance of learning with worksheets and books and assessments, and all of those things look like learning is happening, but learning really is more intangible. And depending on the teacher's philosophy, depending on the parents' philosophy, depending on the student's philosophy, sometimes either one of those individuals might need to lean on seeing worksheets and turning pages and getting grades and seeing report cards, and they measure their child's understanding of the curriculum based on what they see on paper and not from their actual conversations with that child or from how the child generalizes that information in the world around them, how they think critically about the information that they're. It's very easy to fall into that space of checking boxes. I did this, I did that, I did that. It's such a high demand space. There are 500 things happening in the mind of a teacher every minute. There are 1,000 things happening in the heartbeat of a school every minute. And so it's very easy to lean into compliance just to make sure things are happening, as opposed to really focusing on the actual learning. I am a type B teacher, as they say. So I am focused on kids demonstrating learning in intangible ways, in their conversations, in their questioning, in their interactions with their peers, in their connections with what they're learning and the outside world. That to me is evidence of learning more than turning in a short constructed response or solving a multi-step math problem. If you can have a conversation with me about where that math concept or that strategy can be used in a profession in your future, or give me real world situations, I feel like that is a more complex level of thinking. And it's very easy, because of how many tasks are expected, to just have students come into class, do pages 1 to 5 on Monday, pages 6 to 10 on Tuesday, and to say, wow, we finished unit 1, and that kind of language finds itself into the school system very easily. And even though you may lean in that direction, it's really important not to feel that that is how learning is measured. And teachers are doing spectacular jobs with project-based learning and hands-on learning, and students presenting their perspectives on what they learned and doing tasks that really embody the processing, the analyzing, and synthesizing of information for the child. So it's an everyday intentional decision to make sure that compliance doesn't cancel out learning, and that you still hold yourself accountable to demonstrating that learning with some compliance to expectations. How can we make students feel safe before expecting them to succeed? Classroom culture is huge. In most spaces, teachers take the first month of school to build culture, to build safety, to create a classroom family, to explain what a learning space is and what a learning space sounds like and what learning is. And a trial and error is the nature of uncovering new information, and that questioning is just as important as knowing, and encouraging students to respect each other's thinking and to build and to listen intently. Effort should be celebrated just as much as excellence, and make a big deal about a student who tries as much as the student who thrives. A lot of people might say, get your routines, get the kids in routines. And that's great. But I think this question is honing into what's really important, the classroom culture. and how the engagement happens, and that students see each other, they hear each other, and they recognize that in each of us there is something amazing, and we're going to get a chance to see that bright light in everyone. I'm the math, I may be amazing at math, you're that eloquent reader, you are the scientific thinker, you read books, you are the vocabulary king, and that everybody recognizes that each person has a spark, and they trust they trust their peers, and they trust their teachers to make mistakes in front of them, and that learning is effortful, and it's challenging, and it feels hard sometimes, and that's good. All of those things make children come to school and they feel excited, because something amazing and miraculous is going to happen every single day. So I'm not saying that a month is sufficient to do that, because sometimes you're doing that for the entire year, or years. Some kids may need several years before they really recognize what learning is, particularly if in their formative years that understanding was not embedded. So that is what creates safety for me, that children understand that this is your world, you're creating this space, I'm in it to help you, and so they feel safe, and they feel like they belong, and they do not feel like imposters, that they're in a space that they're being tolerated. And it takes a lot of work, but those efforts go towards making children feel safe. So that's why I would answer that question. What does it really mean to teach the whole child? I believe that the previous questions touched on that. Children, they need to be developed intellectually, they need to be developed emotionally, they need to be developed socially, they need to be developed physically. All of those things need to be addressed in the school in 6 hours, along with learning and breaks, and along with all of the other things that are happening in their mind. You will have teachers who are in all the different spaces on the spectrum of how much of my responsibility is a child's emotional, physical, psychological well-being as a teacher, and how much of my responsibility is that child's intellectual development. And you have teachers who believe that their purpose is to come and give information and challenge children's minds. That they are the lecturers, the facilitators. I come with information, you take this information, I challenge you to demonstrate to me how you've synthesized this new set of things that you've learned, how you can demonstrate that to me. And those teachers expect children to come to the classroom, and rightfully so, with a reasonable amount of self-control and emotional regulation and an understanding of what school is. And they're not wrong. And then, there are teachers on the other end of the spectrum who are very in tuned, very sensitive, very keen to the emotional needs and deficiencies of their students, and they create a space where those needs are met and addressed every day, and they're listening and looking for signs and cues, so that they can make sure that that child is whole. And that is a primary focus of how they educate, of their educational style and philosophy. And I try to be somewhere in the middle, but it really depends on case by case, school by school, classroom by classroom. So the whole child, emotionally, physically, intellectually, socially, should be developed. And again, we're doing that in 45 or 50-minute blocks over a 6-hour day. And it's what teachers aim to do every single day. How do you advocate inside a system that's not built for every student? So it goes back to the whole child, right? The educational system is designed for the logical, mathematical, and the linguistic verbal students. If you understand language easily, and you interpret the world through your words and speaking, and books appeal to you, and your creative writing comes with ease, and your language is well developed, and your synthesis of text and your comprehension skills are awakened, you will succeed in the classroom, in the ELA classroom, and across all other subject areas that are, dense and rich with academic language and vocabulary. If you are the mathematical, logistic, problem solver, intuitive student, and your number sense is strong, and you have good evaluative skills, and you've gotten those foundational skills of understanding things from a mathematical, logical, problem solving perspective, you will succeed in the math classroom. And most students who have a moderate and an average amount of capability in those two areas will successfully thrive in our current school system, because that's the way it's structured. And everyone else is kind of struggling, right? If you are a naturalistic learner and you learn from being outdoors, under the sun, looking at tree barks, interacting with living things, that is a limited experience you will have in the average classroom. If you're a musical learner and beats and tones and tempo comes natural to you, and you can hear a beat, you can easily transition between instruments, you're keen, you understand the world through rhythm and tonality and music, then you're struggling to in the classroom, because those experiences are also limited. Of course, there are specialized schools that provide rich opportunities for kids to do those things, and then there's specialized schools, and you can pick your major, and you can get specific classes every day. Not every child is getting that opportunity, and there's some children that are kinesthetic, they're naturally athletic, that is their strength. They will succeed on a sports team. They are bright, they're strategic, they're tactical. Without any formal training, they understand the logistics and the plays, and all of the things that go together to being successful as an athlete and in a sports game. That is just how their brain works, and that's their strength. And the list goes on. We can go into Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences, and everybody's smart. But the classroom the public school system does not allow for every single type of smart to be equally accessed and demonstrated throughout the day. It's a math and ELA focused curriculum. I think most teachers take as much opportunity as they can to embed other skill sets into the classroom. And that's a hallmark of an outstanding teacher and highly effective teacher. Recognizing that is step one. Moving toward adjusting your curriculum as best as is realistically possible to attend to that is the step two. Should we challenge the curriculum or just deliver it? So question 6 is kind of answered in question 5. We should challenge it, of course, and amend it. And I believe that in 2025 that school administrators and superintendents and school districts understand that teachers are on the ground in the classroom having the most intimate interaction with the students. So it says challenge, but I feel like you have to amend and you have to question. I believe that now a lot of districts allow teachers to shop the learning platforms and shop the curriculums and evaluate how much of what they see in a program is going to best suit the needs of their students. So absolutely, yes, challenge the curriculum, definitely, within bounds and within the confines of respect. How do you reconnect with your purpose when burnout sets in? Yeah. Human services is exhausting, right? Teachers are burnt out, nurses are burnt out, the list goes on. How do you reconnect with your purpose? That's a good question. I don't feel disconnected from my purpose at all. I know that I am in my calling and that being an educator, facilitator, um, you know, learning and development instructor of some kind is where I'm supposed to be. And right now, that gifting or that purpose is being manifested in a New York City public school classroom. And that is now, right? And I've worked in other, learning spaces as a facilitator, as a tutor, as a teacher, as a manager. All of those spaces require that specific skill set. So I don't feel disconnected from my purpose. I am happy that every day I get up and do something I love and something that I feel matches my ability. Is it hard? Yes. It is very hard. It's very difficult. Teaching is a challenging job. It doesn't mean you're not going to love it. It doesn't mean you're not going to be rewarded. It is a difficult job. And I think setting realistic goals, having a cutoff time, because the fact is, more than 75% of the work that contributes to student success is done on unpaid teacher time. Master teachers who have a developed system of plans and lessons that have been worked and reworked and tweaked and successfully modified over time, their planning time is significantly reduced. It doesn't mean it's not there, right? And it doesn't mean that their job is any easier. It just means that they may have less of an obligation to take work home and to work at home and to work from home and to work on weekends and holidays. That may be lessened for them. But outside of that, I think there's always something to do, right? It's never done. It's never done. There's always something to do. And you have to have a cutoff time. If in regards to burnout, you need to have a time where you stop. Realistically, right? You need to be a healthy whole person. Teachers have families, they have communities, they have obligations outside of school, and then you need to give your students your best self as well. So you have to stop, and if something isn't done, then you improvise and you demonstrate the same resilience you want your children to demonstrate. You always provide quality instruction, but you have to stop, because that is a wheel that will keep turning. And every teacher has a 2 a.m. story. Every teacher has a 4 a.m. story, up checking email, planning a lesson before the superintendent comes, doing some grading, filling a report. Every teacher has that story. And not many other professions are up at 3 a.m. in the morning doing work that needs to be done for the next day, right? So I think the key thing for burnout is to stop. I'm learning. I think I'm better, but I'm learning how to do that over my years of teaching. Why is it so hard to see potential in the difficult students? I try to find the light. I literally look at a child who is dysregulated, uninterested with learning, unmotivated, combative, disruptive, chaotic. And I try to say, God, where is there's a light in there somewhere, and I'm going to find it. It's going to take me time, and it's going to take all of those things that seem impossible to do. In the interview, the 10 minutes of chatting with them, after the lunch bell rings, the field trips, the small group conversations when you're there with a couple of kids and the kids are working and you find yourself talking to those students, the 90-second chats outside the classroom. It takes a lot, but however, it really is about figuring out the thing that this child is good at, the thing this child likes to do, which you might recognize, because a child that doesn't have self-control is going to default to do what they want to do anyway. So you're going to see the thing the child likes to do because that's what they'll be doing instead of learning. And when you recognize that, it's now, again, how do I embed this? How do I infuse this into instruction? How do I make this part of my lesson? How do I, pull that child in using this interest or this skill set? And it takes work. It takes weeks, months, the whole 10-month school year, several grades. It's a journey for everyone. A child may start off kindergarten struggling, and they may get their success and their, bringing themselves to a behavior expectation that's typical, might take them till 12th grade. And that kindergarten teacher will never know that the things that she did and that she said, and the first grade teacher and the second grade teacher and every teacher that was able to educate that child and put that seed in there, they might not see the fruit that child might bear. But you just have to keep looking. And it's difficult, of course, because there's all of these behaviors in front of you, and it seems daunting. It seems very daunting. Sometimes it seems so far from what is expected for success in the classroom. Like, these are the things that a student needs to do to be successful in a learning space, and this is what the student is doing. And so it's just like how it feels overwhelming. And again, our primary job is the dissemination of intellectual information. So while we're doing that, and while kids need to learn and the lessons need to progress, we are also looking for the light. So that's what I look for the light. I look for the fire. The kids may see me looking at them with this face like, but I'm really looking like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? And that's what I think. And that's how I figure that. I don't know why it's difficult to see. It's just because it's hidden under all of the chaos and the dysfunction and the disruption and the dysregulation. And some of that the student has to own, and some of that is not their fault because they were not parented. They were not given the skills at a time in their life where it was best suited for them to learn those things. It wasn't taught to them. And so now they're getting information that's conflicting with their normal behavior. And so it's already embedded. And so there's unlearning, and then there's learning. And so, all of that is masking the light that's in them. So that's what makes it difficult to see. What should learning look like beyond just passing the test? Learning should look like verbalizing. Learning should look like aha moments, like, now I get it. Oh, I see. Like, that's one of the sweetest sounds. I get goosebumps each time a child says that, because it is not only the new information being received, it is your own metacognition. They recognize, wait, I didn't know that. Now I do. Okay. And that realization, and that the pleasure of learning, and the joy of succeeding, of overcoming a challenge, of trying something 3 or 4 times and succeeding, and the curiosity and the inquiry, and just that thirst for something different, and the challenge, and the controlled debating and disagreeing in the classroom, and thinking and bringing up extra scenarios. So what are you saying? So if this happens, is that what happens? And connecting it to the world outside of class, and giving this information life. It's not just, let me solve question number 4. It is, oh my God, so that building that I saw in the city, that bridge, is that a right angle triangle? Like, that is what learning is. When the information that the child is learning is meaningful, and it's not just a set of processes. I believe that that is what learning should look like. It should be, I'm going to use this information. It has landed, it has taken root. And learning also looks like kids recognizing the connection between their previous learning. When they say, oh, I remember when, we did this in fourth grade, or we did this in fifth grade. That is when, learning is being connected. Those are the sounds, those are the conversations, the questions. That is what learning sounds like to me. Inquiring minds, curious students who are questioning, who are having those moments, who are wondering, who are saying, wait, just a sec, I'm going to get it. Give me a minute. And they're working on this math problem, who, they keep their fingers crossed. Is it right? Oh my God, they take the paper and they're going back again, who are rereading the passage and saying, oh my God, when they read a book, like, oh my God, I know what's going to happen. I know what he's going to do. When the book is alive, and when, they're wowed by the wonders of science, or they're wowed by, the revelation of the past. Also, that's why this happens, or that's why we say that word, because of this historical event. Those connections and that kind of conversation and that curiosity and that, a child that draws the pain. I remember a high schooler drew the Trail of Tears, and it was all just color, and it was pain, and it was just, that was how he wanted to represent this information that he just learned through art. Like, that is learning. That he's never going to forget that, because he processed it and he put it on a canvas. And there were no human forms, but there was color and there was meaning. That is what learning looks like to me. How can we center relationships over rigid rules? So I think the word rules, we need to take that out for sure, and move towards commitments. A rule is something I tell you to do. That's what a rule is. And I mean, everybody has a defiant spirit in them. I do. People tell you to do something, then you just, something awakens and you don't want to do it. I think it should be commitments, because where is the student buy-in? If I tell you to do it, as opposed to if you say this is what I'm capable of. Rigid rules and rigid. Why is rigidity necessary? Is your need for rigidity in the classroom? No, because it's an ever-evolving, fluid space that has boundaries and has structure, but rigid rules, absolutely not. Relationships, yes. Relationships are centered around, the purpose. Like, why are we here? What is your role in the classroom? What is my role in the classroom? And how can we make, what is all of our contributions to making learning happening? And it's a team, and still today in 2025, kids say, but you're supposed to know, you're the teacher, you're supposed to tell me, don't ask me, you're supposed to tell me. So that antiquated understanding that the teacher's job, he comes with everything in his head, he knows everything, you know nothing, and the teacher tells everything to you. Students in 2025 still think that. They don't recognize their own knowledge and their own perspectives as unique and meaningful and capable of contributing to the classroom. So the relationship is, listen, we're all in this space together. We each have a job, and this is something we have to do. We have a few minutes to make this magic happen. And this is how we're going to do it. You're modeling the resilience and the ability to pivot and the emotional regulation that you want the kids to mirror. So definitely no rigid rules, just commitments and contracts that are written by the students, and celebrate their willingness to be accountable to that, and build relationship and be purposeful, and remind students of their purpose in the classroom. So those were our 10 tough questions about education. If there's any question that you would like to leave a comment on, please do so. And if this video and any of my videos are bringing any value to you, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you so much for tuning in.